What's up, War Room? Welcome back. Final Q&A, Discord mailbag, post-draft guide throwdown before we hit night one, fresh off recording the pod. CR's got the backwards hat on. He's in the last few days before he has to put on the shirt and tie and get on the desk for 72 straight hours. How you feeling, CR?
I'm good. I'm ready to roll. The nice thing is I only have to wear the shirt and tie for SMY Sunday, recapping. Ironically, the only time I wear the tie is for Jets, which is kind of hilarious, honestly. And then I'll be taping reactions with Sims on Thursday, reactions with Barry on Friday, live with Bleacher Report rounds 4 through 7 is going to be. I'm going to be on the desk for like 6 hours Saturday live, which will be something. I'm ready for it, though. 320 players on the big board for the draft guide. Let's do this thing.
One of my favorite pods we do every year is effectively after you really pull an all-nighter and I kind of pull an all-nighter Thursday night and we just scrape you off the floor.
It's a good
the
one.
Friday morning of like kind of like incoherent about whatever the first pick was and what's left on night two. So that is always a fun one. All right, let's dive right in. From Jared. Fun question. If Joe Douglas was still the GM of the Jets, who do you believe would be the favorite for the 7th overall pick?
You people are sick.
That is a sick but funny question.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, shit. We just went through all these tough scenarios on the main pod. If JD, the scenario of the Jets keeping JD, let's assume does that mean they still have Rodgers? I'm assuming that would mean they would have kept Rodgers.
That
right?
does affect things here because they kind of just did whatever he wanted.
I mean, if they didn't have Rodgers, Joe Douglas is the kind of guy who would then, for job security purposes, take a quarterback at 7 to be like, I'm running it back again with my fourth quarterback.
Dart.
I could, yes, there it is. If they moved down from, and if they kept Rodgers, it would be whatever pass catcher Rodgers wanted. I would guess.
Devontae would still be here.
That is true.
So I think it would actually be. That's a good question.
I mean, definitely taking Dart with no Rodgers because then he gets to reset the clock again. He gets to year 7, year 8, year 9, year 10.
It might be Kelvin Banks at 7, which is not like, to be fair to Joe Douglas, who did a lot of terrible drafting with the offensive line. He eventually got some things. Tippmann's a player. Obviously, Olu's going to be a hell of a player. It was just the Becton, Max Mitchell, the Pitt tackle. Oh my God.
Carter Warren,
duh. There are so
Discord's going to be furious you forgot Carter Warren's name.
There are so many draft names in my brain right now that I can't even remember like the 3rd string tackle on the Jets. And think about how much Jets talk I do in my life. That's actually kind of scary. That never happens to me. So yeah, I think Banks is like the good and bad of what Douglas liked a lot of the times. He's pretty athletic. When he connects in the run game, people go flying. He has some moments in pass pro where I don't want to read the whole scouting report. Banks has a long scouting report that I think I would imagine I wrote for the guide. But yeah, that would be his type of player. But you're 100% right. If they extend, because they would have had to extend Douglas, right? Yes. So if they extended Douglas,
God, I hate this world and scenario.
They would have extended Douglas, and then if it was over with Aaron, but it was like, a little bit more calm than how this ended. Yeah, I could see him taking Dart for sure.
Next one from our friend Alec Connor. Who is your favorite round 5 to 7 player you need the Jets to draft? We've talked a ton about Mickens. I already got the clip from the live show of you picking Mickens. So someone who's not Mickens for round 5 to 7.
I know. I feel like I need to start kind of branching off from that because I've just said Mickens so many times. Andrew Armstrong, the receiver from Arkansas, and Isaac Tesla, another receiver from Arkansas. I like both of those guys a lot for the Jets. I really, really do. I could see both of them being fits at what they need at wide receiver. You look at the defensive side of the ball, man, I like David Walker a lot from Central Arkansas. I'm just going down this Arkansas rabbit hole right now. I compared him to Carl Lawson, actually. I always fall for those compact powerhouse edge rushers. He's got some pretty good flexibility for his size, though, as well. Looking at corner, I want to go deeper here. Daniel Jackson was another receiver that I liked for day 3 from Minnesota. He made some crazy catches this year. He's a better player than he gets credit for. Deeper in this draft, Jay Toya, the nose tackle from UCLA, he could be that run stuffer that you get for super cheap at the end of the draft. And he's just going to play early downs for you and goal line for you. But man, like that's a role the Jets desperately are lacking right now. And they're going to get that role in this draft. I'm pretty confident in it. So yeah, there's plenty of different. I could do this all day. I mean, the good thing is I think I've watched enough players this year, and I've been surprised before, but I think I'm going to have an instant reaction to every Jets pick. I mean, I watched 320. I ranked 320 players.
We're getting full guide coverage this year. This
is a weird thing about the guide. If a player didn't make my top 320, we had a couple write-ups that actually didn't make the guide. So Max wrote up a couple tight ends that weren't in my top 320. So the write-up exists, but they're not ranked. So they're not in the guide right now. So
keep on ice, just in case.
Paul wrote up Donovan Jackson, the quarterback from Houston. He didn't make my top 320. So like that's how many reports we did this year.
Sicko mode of amount of. Next one from Toontown. I'm curious if you guys know how the Jets prepared for this year's draft, considering it's a new administration. Did they keep a lot of holdover scouts? Did they have enough time to institute their own grading system and philosophies, or is that something that won't happen until next year? Interesting inside baseball question. I would guess, and then CR, you'll be better equipped to answer this. We know there's some holdovers, right? They just demoted Phil Savage. They didn't get rid of him. I am sure there is some, like you can't turn over your entire scouting department in 1 year on this short of notice. So their area scouts, I'm sure there are plenty of holdovers. I would guess that Muji, Spielman, and to an extent Patton are going to have their own grading system that they're going to work with Glenn on, and they're going to have a certain criteria that they're working towards that's just going to be different than what Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas were doing. And you could cascade that information down to your scouts to say, look, like prioritize these kind of players with these traits at these positions, because this is the grading system we're going to use. I would guess you would have enough time to implement that where you don't have to turn over 10 scouts to do that. But at the top, you have to say, look, we need you looking for these kind of players versus these kind of players, because this is where we're at as a team right now. It's a totally different roster and team situation than it's been the past 2 years. You have a completely different type of quarterback. You have completely different expectations. You're playing a different defensive scheme, a different offensive scheme. But how do you think the preparation looked at one Jets drive these past 65 days or whatever it's been?
So something you have to remember is reports have were filed before these guys even got there, because they file reports throughout the year. So the college scouts, of course, do. And then what they'll do is the pro scouts, guys that work in pro personnel, they're doing advanced scouting, they're doing street free agents, actual free agency. When all of that ends and free agency ends, those guys jump in on college, and they'll do a lot of day 3 players and UDFA players. But the UDFA players, honestly, though, are also more done by the area scouts, because the UDFA process is almost recruiting, where the area scout hopefully has a rapport with the guy that didn't get drafted, knows the agent, and that's how they get them there. It's a pitch process. Like, you're literally recruiting those guys. So, yeah, reports have already been filed, and I don't know this is fact. I would be really surprised if Muji and Glenn turned over their entire system for this draft, because all the scouts are still there. Most of the scouts are still there. They didn't turn over that department yet, and they've already filed all their stuff. So it'd be kind of weird to get there. You have 2.5 months to go, and you go, hey, all those reports you filed, this is actually how our grading scale is, or how we file our reports, and this is the database. So I don't think it would be possible or wise from a time perspective to completely uplift that. Now, individually, are Muji and Glenn doing things how they've done them where they worked previously? Yes. And are they making the picks? Yes. So it's kind of weird. It almost doesn't matter as much as you would think, because I'm not saying they're not going to have meetings. They're having meetings. They're putting players on a board. They're going through players. Muji is one man, right? He's not getting through 500 prospects. But even like, I do this as a one-man scouting department. And I also, to be fair, I started 11 months in advance, while a GM is trying to get through a training camp and then a season. And then, so it's just different, where he's going to have to rely on, hey, our Southeast scout, loves this kid as a UDFA, as a gunner. He ran a 4.4 at his pro day. Blah, blah, blah. Like, we're going to trust him and we're going to give a good budget here for him. So I think, yeah, it's still a process that it can't be turned over like that immediately. And it'll be interesting to see what hires they make and what they do implement. But yeah, it's a long answer to say it's almost impossible to uplift it now.
We got a question from Izzy about a Twitter rumor that the Lions may have interest in trading Jameson Williams during the draft weekend, which we know Aaron Glenn wants speed. I don't necessarily believe the rumor because I don't know why they would trade him. But what would you give up for him if, okay, let's say the Lions call their own friend and say, look, like, we can't pay everyone. Like, we're looking to move this dude. And we know you need a receiver and we know you need speed. What would you trade for Jameson Williams? Would you go as high as the second round pick, or is it like a combination of day 3 picks, basically?
This answer might surprise people. I'm not trading for Jameson Williams because, number one, I wouldn't want to trade the asset it's going to cost. And number two, I'm not paying Jameson Williams. I have to pay Garrett Wilson. So, and I'm not saying you can't pay 2 wide receivers, but if the Lions, after he's finally breaking out, are willing to trade Jameson Williams, doesn't that tell you everything you need to know about Jameson Williams, who has speed for days, is a good player, but has had suspensions, could not figure it out at Ohio State, had the 1 year at Alabama, and it took a while for him to get going to Detroit. And now you're going to surrender an asset and offer to pay the guy when he's due to get paid when you already have Garrett Wilson there. I wouldn't even pick up the phone. People might think I'm totally nuts, but it's just, I don't think it lines up for this team at all.
All right, Izzy, you got to put your Twitter rumors away. That's a hard no from Connor.
You got to go draft, and you're not going to get Jameson Williams, but you have to go draft those roles now. It just doesn't align. It doesn't align. It's almost why I'm so down on the idea. I don't think a team offers you anything good for Breece, because a team would be sitting there and being like, cool, so we get to trade for Breece Hall, who we have to pay, who hasn't been consistently performing because of a lack of health. And then people might counter and say, well, then you're getting JMO for a discount. I don't know. Wide receiver is different than running back. It's, I would, that wouldn't pass the smell test if the Lions were so willing to give up on Jameson Williams now. That would raise a red flag.
There'd have to be something else going on behind the scenes, because that's a team that kind of needs to win a Super Bowl next year.
Right.
If, they're offloading him, you kind of be thinking twice about why. Get speed, but there's probably other ways to go get that speed, because they do badly need speed. It's like the Jets have the slowest collection of receivers I've ever seen in my life. And I was a very slow receiver, Division III, but very slow. Lazard, Reynolds, Tyler Johnson, Corley. It's a bunch of these hybrid tight end running backs playing receiver. They need someone who could just take the top off. We've been saying this forever, but one of these years they're going to get it. Question from David. You are given the choice between watching the Super Bowl, assume no Jets, and the draft. Which one are you choosing? Now, I'm assuming you have a slight bias here because you're a draft professional. What's interesting? It's the way I consume the draft now, since we do Badlands, is different. When I was a kid, I would sit and watch the draft all weekend, and it burned in my head. But I follow the draft on our Discord and on X and on YouTube, and from the parts of your coverage that I could watch versus sitting and watching it on sit back TV all day. So I would have to go with the Super Bowl, because the draft of what it is, it's really just a reading of names and then it's analysis. I'm much more interested in getting your 3 minutes of analysis off YouTube and then going and fighting with the Discord because the Jets just drafted 2 running backs back to back. And that it's a very I think this is part of why you flourished and our coverage around this has flourished, is it's a event that's very conducive to how media is now to be covered. Yep. It's built to be followed on social media. It's built to be followed in more of a community setting versus just sitting and watching 11 hours of TV. So it's when you see an article, I saw this passed around today, I forget who wrote it, but saying the draft is stupid and boring.
It's the New York Mag,
yeah, and we give too much attention to it, which if you just sit and watch the draft on traditional television for 27 hours, I agree. I agree. That's not how I would consume it. I would consume it in a live stream. I would consume it through different like digital outlets, and I would consume it in bits and pieces for the teams that you care about. So I would have to go with the Super Bowl, but I think an open, more interesting question as to how the draft is covered and what an industry it is now, because it's not about the actual reading of the names. It's about learning the story and the scouting and the history of all these players, to sort of bridging the gap between college football and the NFL, especially for someone like, if you're not a diehard college football fan, which I'm not, this whole process is a fun way to get more engaged in college football and learn more about these players. And then remember a few years from now, like, oh, I mock drafted that guy in the 4th round to the Jets. And 3 years later, here he is on the Bengals, like catching 4 passes for 50 yards and a touchdown. Like, I remember him. So that's my 2 cents on it overall.